My goodness, where has that been all season?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There, what's up? It's Saturday, October 26, 2024. Welcome into this live postcast reaction edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me to celebrate Carolina finding their way back. Good grief, what a performance this was in Charlottesville on Saturday afternoon. Man, thank you so much for making us your first check-in right after the game. Want to welcome in all the everydayers, the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and of course our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Welcome everyone. Let's get right into this thing, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, folks, it has been 2 weeks since we've been able to talk since a game. And boy, what a helpful open week that was. Carolina goes to Charlottesville and romps. They have their way with the Cavs, come out victorious 41-14. My. Virginia doesn't score a touchdown until they have their backups in. Good night. Carolina is now 4-4 on the season, 3-3 overall. Sorry, I'll bring that music out. We don't need it anymore as we're getting into things here. Carolina 4-4 overall, 1-3 in ACC play. And this is what we'll do. Several big picture takeaways from the game. We'll look at some specifics of the game. I'll pull up the box score for us to look at while we're talking. We'll take an ad break, talk about some other things we want to look at. And then we'll take one more ad break and go look at your comments and questions. And then we'll get out of here and get on with the rest of whatever your Saturday has, knowing that you don't have to worry about a Tar Heel dub because it already happened. I want to go ahead, by the way, and remind you right now, Carolina has their last basketball exhibition tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be doing this all over again. We will have a live postcast right after that. All right, let's look big picture, a couple things before we get to the specifics of this game. Number one, boy, the open week, it was good to these North Carolina Tar Heels. I mean, they looked like a completely different team on both sides of the ball, and in the process, end their 4-game skid. And here's the thing. I don't want to miss the resolve it takes to do what North Carolina did today when everything around you has been crumbling. And I mean that on and off the field. This is a team that last time they were on the field, we did not yet know that Tylee Kraft had died. Reminder, it was immediately after the game in Mac Brown's press conference where we all learned that. So this is the first time we've seen Carolina on the field since we've all known that reality. Also, the 4-game losing streak. Also, you're on the road for the first time in a while. There's a lot that could go wrong and people would understand. And yet, this Tar Heels team says, nah, we are not done. We're going to rally together. You and I have talked a good bit about this is a fork in the road moment. Carolina could either pack it in and say, well, you know, gave it the good old college try this season, but it just wasn't meant to be. Or they could come out and say, you know what? We have a losing record right now. We haven't won an ACC game yet, but this season's not done. We can still make a bowl game for crying out loud. And that is the path they took, and I love it. So, well done by the coaching staff to hold this together, keeping morale up, holding the locker room intact. That's no small feat. And so very well done by the coaching staff, and then well done by the players, because even with the coaching staff keeping it together, they can put a good face on it, but the players can be like, whatever, man, forget that. I'm out. That's not what's happened. So kudos to everyone for circling the wagons and doing this. Will it carry on over the next final 4 games of the regular season? Who knows? But this is a step in the right direction, and that's all you can ask for today, because today's game at Virginia is the only game you can win today. And yes, let's acknowledge this. There is the frustration of, shouldn't we have been doing this all season long? Where has this been? Well, this is a team in flux in a lot of ways. You know, Jacoby Criswell, third string quarterback to start the season, finding his way. The defense, yes, they started out better than they've been in this 4-game losing streak, but now Kaimon Rucker's back, right? Like there's just all these things. They're still all learning under the leadership of Geoff Collins. Have there been multiple things that needed to be fixed in those weeks? 100%. But clearly this is a step in the right direction. And here's what remains true. While yes, hopes of any shot of making it to the playoff gone. Any shot of making the ACC championship game, it's probably, I mean, maybe mathematically still possible, but it's not going to happen. So what you're playing for now is respect. You're playing for bowl eligibility. You're playing for getting, a winning record by the end of the season. I mean, you could still not just finish 500. You could finish 8-4 if you win out. I know that sounds crazy, but it is possible. So why not continue to do this? And as you look at this, let me say what we've been saying basically all season long. You are now back to 500 at 4-4, and you just need 2 more wins to go to a bowl game. And those remaining 4 games at Florida State next week, then another open week. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. Then you host Wake. Then you go to Boston College, and that'll be tough if Castellanos is in, but he's been in and out. And then you host NC State right after Thanksgiving to end the regular season. You just need 2 of those wins, but again, you need them one at a time. But as I've said about the schedule so often this season, every one of those games is a winnable game. But also, if you don't show up like you did today, every one of those games is a losable game. And that's where it's at. I want to say just a heartfelt thank you to Virginia's kindness of honoring Tylee Craft. Their sticker decals on their helmet, honoring him on the video board. I mean, this is obviously, as we all well know, a program that recently has lost some of their own. So they know what it is to deal with the sheer pain and hurt that the Tar Heel community and the Kraft family is going through. So very well done by Virginia and their football team and everyone surrounding that. Thank you. That means so much. Okay, as to the actual game, here's where I think the starting point is the defense, because this defense has been much maligned and for good reason of late. They have been giving up the stark contrast in stats surrendered from those first 3 games when they were winning, and then from James Madison until before noon today were starkly different. And then they come out today and just a different football team. Let's unpack some of it. Kaimon Rucker. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have this dude back as we do. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the box score so you can just see that and check it out. I mean, it is so critical and great to have him back. Let's just look at his numbers really quick here. Finishes the game. I've lost him. 8 total tackles, 5 solo, 3.5 TFLs, an interception. What a great interception that was on Virginia's first drive of the second half to help keep that momentum Carolina had gained at the end of the first half. 3 sacks. Kaimon Rucker, welcome back. I believe that puts him, is it 19 for his career now? Maybe it's up to 20 now. And so getting into that LT territory, that's crazy. But I mean, legitimately, we've said, I think I said on yesterday's prep for this game, man, like Carolina really needs the fully healthy version of Kaimon Rucker, or at least the healthy enough to be fully Kaimon Rucker. And that's what they got today. Okay, we can't get very far into this without talking about Jahvaree Ritzie's pick 6. I mean, that was just, it was wonderful. It was a tipped pass. He had the wherewithal to haul it in, get out to the edge, shook off a would-be tackler around his feet, Omarion Hampton style, and then just trucked it up the sideline. Had a couple nice blocks. His teammates helping him out there. But boy, it was rumbling, stumbling, and that man needed some oxygen when that was all said and done. I mean, it's just third game in a row now with the big game-changing play. And it's funny because this was number 1 in my what to watch for this game. Could Carolina not only get a third straight game with a game-changing play like this, but this time, could they capitalize on it? Because remember, 2 games ago, you had the Caleb Cost pick 6. 1 game ago, you had the Huzzy punt return touchdown, and now you have this one. But Carolina was able to get this one and turn it into a win. So all around great stuff. Let's talk about the sacks. Carolina, previous 2 games, 0 sacks in either one of them. No sacks. And then they come out in this game and get 6 in the first half. The first half. The most they had in an entire game this season before today was 5. And they get more than that in the first half of this game. In fact, they finished with 10 total sacks, which, if I remember correctly from looking up the numbers, that's the first time they've had 10 since the 2000 season. They only had 15 total coming this entire season coming in. So they got 2/3 of that exactly today. I mean, just a great performance of pinning your ears back and getting into it. So not only was there the 3 from Rucker, Stick Lane had 1, Amari Campbell had 1, Bo Atkinson had 2, Jahvaree Ritzie had 1, but Elijah Huzzy had 1, and Des Evans had 1. In fact, of those 6 first half sacks, they were all by a different player. That's also critical, is getting multiple guys going and doing things of that nature. So, and then the other thing I want to mention about the defense, and then we'll go ahead and take our first break, is the job they did of not allowing Calandria to beat them. Let's see how he finished. You know, we often talk about Carolina kind of struggling with some of these mobile quarterbacks who can get out and do it. Now, his numbers, I wonder if I could see, because remember in college, that those numbers for a quarterback, sacks are factored into your rush yardage. And so we don't have that for him. I wish I could get, I'm looking at the box score to get his total stat, but let's just, to the eyeball test, we'll just leave it there. To the eyeball test, Carolina did not allow Calandria to beat them on the ground. And yes, there were a time or two he picked things up with his legs, but for the most part, the Tar Heels did a phenomenal job of not allowing that to happen. And that is critical and key. All right, Omarion Hampton, back-to-back seasons of 1,000 yards. We're going to talk about this guy and J.J. Jones' big day. We're going to switch to the other side of the ball. We'll hit that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about our good friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with over $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. How about some Wooden Award odds as we think about the National Player of the Year for basketball? Hunter Dickinson from Kansas leads the way at plus 500. Then RJ Davis and then Mark Sears from Alabama next at plus 600. Following them is our guy Caleb Love and Janai Broom from Auburn at plus 1,600. And that top 6 is rounded out by Marquette's Cam Jones at plus 2,200. So if you want to get in on that action at FanDuel or anything else, maybe you want to get an early start on Carolina's line at Florida State next Saturday, you can do all of that at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's get right back into this thing. We are talking about the offense now. And first we got to say, as part of that this game really swung at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. Those critical moments. So I'm going to look back at those drives. I'm going to actually put it chronological. So, Virginia, their first drives down, stalls out, and Carolina is able to hold them to the field goal. And then Carolina responds with their own touchdown to J.J. Jones to get things off and running. Eventually, the teams trade field goals after some punts. And then we get down to like the final 4 minutes. Carolina gets the ball with 4 minutes left before halftime. Drive down, getting 75 yards, getting Omarion Hampton. This was after Virginia's field goal. Omarion Hampton touchdown. There's only a minute 32 technically left at that point. Carolina gets a 3 and out and then goes and gets another touchdown. That's that bomb to J.J. Jones, that insane catch. We'll talk about that in a minute. Taking them to the locker room up by a much bigger score than I think we imagined they would be. At that point, it's 24-6. And you're like, man, I didn't think that would happen. But then Carolina responds. Remember, Virginia gets the ball to start the second half. And, Virginia has a couple plays, and then there's the Rucker INT, which is followed by a Kaimon Rucker, an Omarion Hampton touchdown. And so just a really good job bridging the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half to ultimately put this game out of reach right then and there. And then it was just like the rest of the game. And I mean, by the point that Hampton scored that touchdown to make it 31-6, there were still 12 minutes left in the third, but the game was effectively over at that point. Now we will say more about that in a second, but that felt so good for North Carolina, that swing. All right, let's get to JJ Jones. I have talked multiple times this season that Carolina, with the lack of like a Josh Downs or a Tez Walker, needed one of these receivers to really step up. And I guess in some ways that's been Bryson Nesbitt this season, who unfortunately, as we know, is now out. JJ Jones has had some opportunities to do so, but he's not really been able to capitalize on those, either just not being able to haul in catches or whatever it is. And I've just said multiple times, like, I want to see JJ Jones just make a big time play to go win a ball that, is kind of a 50-50 ball. And that catch in the end zone with defensive pass interference in his face at the end of the first half was absolutely bonkers. I mean, to haul that in, the wherewithal to get your foot down, it wouldn't have been an NFL catch because I think he only got his left foot in, and to maintain control throughout the catch. Really, really, really good stuff. In fact, his 2 touchdowns is the first time this season a Carolina receiver has had 2 touchdowns, believe it or not. So JJ finishes for the day, 5 catches, 129 receiving yards. Really, really good stuff from JJ right there. Let's stick with the offense. Omarion Hampton. This dude comes into the day 901 yards on the season, looking to get to back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons for him, as he obviously did last year, finishing with the second most rushing yards in Carolina history, 15-something to Don McCauley's 17-something. So Omarion, in every game he's finished this year, has gone over the 100-yard mark on the ground. Didn't in that Charlotte game, would have if he had stayed healthy. But remember, that's the game he got banged up and had to come out. Well, of course, he's going to come out and do it again. You know it. Omarion Hampton, no kind of like big, crazy. What was his longest run today? Like a 12. This was just getting after it in consistent running. 26 rushes, 105 total yards, and 2 touchdowns with, again, a long of 12. It didn't take one magnificent run, and that was it. Just Chip Lindsey staying with it and giving it to him, but a nicer complementary mix of he and Jacoby Criswell through the air, and we'll get to that in a second. But man, Omarion, yes, up over 1,000 for the season, 1,004 to be exact, and has now gotten over 100 yards every game this season that he's finished. And for the Tar Heels, they've had a 100-yard rusher every game this season, because in that Charlotte game, when he had to come out, Davion Bullet Goss, was able to get in himself. One more thing on the offense. Want to look at Jacoby Criswell. We talked about how he's had this declining completion percentage every game so far this season, from 60 against NC Central to 58, 53, 53, and then I guess a slight uptick against Georgia Tech back up to 54.8. Today, season high for Jacoby Criswell in completion percentage with 63. His total, it was 19 of 30 through the air for 293 and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions also, with a QB rating of 167.4. And so I thought, man, this was another step forward for Criswell, who's continuing to find his way and find some growth in this offense. And that was a very encouraging sign for me. And I want to continue to see more of it from him. He didn't have to use his legs a ton, but I thought that when he did so, it was very helpful, right? Like 4 rushes for 27 total yards, did have a long of 19, but just had a few key moments in the first half when he left the pocket and just took off and went. I think that long, when he had 19 yards, it was like a 2nd and 20 or something like that after a hold. and picked almost all of it up. I think that made it like 3rd and 1, if I'm remembering correctly. It was something in that vein, allowing Carolina to maintain that drive. So just, I thought some really good decision-making today from Jacoby Criswell. Obviously, I can't say that blanketly. Like, every decision was great. I haven't gone back and broken down the film or anything like that yet, but it just felt like a lot of really good decisions from him in this game. And then the other thing I want to say before we take one more break and get to your comments is this. North Carolina led 24-6 at the half. And there's this fear because of how this season's gone, because of Carolina's inability to close games, whether it was Duke or Georgia Tech, for example. But the Duke game, where Carolina just, what was it, like still 7.5 minutes to go in the third quarter, still up 20-0, was it at that point? And Duke just comes roaring back and takes that game. And it's just like, oh. And so because of that, we're all asking ourselves at halftime, is this going to be Duke 2.0? Are we going to suffer that all over again? Or can Carolina actually do things? And I don't mind telling you what a breath of fresh air it was to get that Omarion Hampton, Kaimon Rucker pick right out of halftime, to get the Jahvaree Ritzie pick 6, right? Like, there were just, Carolina kept making plays unto the point where Virginia brings in their backups on offense with still like 10 minutes to go in the game. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I couldn't get to my mute button in time. And that's what you want to make a team do. Step on their like jugular in that way. Get the bus ready to get out of town and go home to Chapel Hill, because you've done so much to put this game away. And that's what Carolina did. 41-14. Really, really well done by the Tar Heels. All right, I want to go check out your comments, see what questions you have, if there's anything to look at there. And if not, we'll just get on out of here in just a second. That's where we'll head in just a second. Right after I tell you about Prize Picks, which is the place that has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players. You're given a stat, Isaac Shade, 5 made threes, more or less. It's going to be less because I'm not a great shooter. I'm just telling you right now. And doing so, if you get it right, you can win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I love how simple this concept is. Takes away any concern over complicated like draft strategies or other stuff. I also really appreciate that Prize Picks has an injury insurance policy. Nothing's worse than picking someone and they go down like the second play of the game. I'm petrified all the time of that happening to me. Well, with Prize Picks, your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. I also like checking on their weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, when Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% off to provide even more value. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege on the Prize Picks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Go on, run your game. All right, guys, we're going to go now to looking at your comments. Man, nothing much going. Just a lot of questions. Tony Dowd, yes. Tony says, it's not popping up. Forgive me. There we go. Is UNC better or is Virginia that bad? I don't think it's that Virginia is that bad. They've been really competitive, but I think more so, Tony, it is that Carolina played like infinitely better today, making play after play after play. Because a lot of this season, Carolina has strung together like some good plays, but not been able to continue making plays throughout a game. Not been able to continue making the winning plays. It's like they'll make 45 minutes worth of winning plays, but not 60. What's nice about today is they only had to make about 45 minutes of winning plays because then the game was over. And I think that's what it's about, is that Carolina was consistently better throughout the entirety of the game, if that makes sense. Now, the question for me, Tony, and others that I'm sure we're all wondering, is this a one-off or is this the new normal? And what's nice is you have this game and you go to Florida State next week. Oh, gosh, I want to win that game. Mac Brown. Oh, we got to beat Florida State at Florida State. I just thought about that. Okay, anyway. And then you get another off week. to rest up your injuries and other things. And I think, Tony, that's part of this too, is getting guys like there's something to be said for that extra 7 days and how it can heal, not just like the bigger known injuries, but even just the nicks and bruises that guys are still playing with. Like that is a massive thing to give your body that rest. And so I think all of that factors in. I just noticed somebody said that I'm kind of pixelated. Is that still going on, or was that just earlier? Looks like my internet might be having a little bit of difficulty today, so I apologize. Hopefully it is better now. Shoof. And here's the thing from Kevin Graham. Kevin says UNC showed some toughness in this game. And I think that is a very important point, is that Carolina showed up not only making plays, but they were gritty. They were doing the things they needed to do while still being controlled, right? Because it's one thing to be tough and gritty, but some people don't know how to shut the water valve off quickly when a play is dead or done or over. And that's that fine line. I thought Carolina handled that well today, which also is a good moment to say, this brings to mind just Kevin's question or statement here. One of the other things I talked about Carolina needing to do is to control the emotion of the moment. And a lot of that is, yes, individual on the players, but also how the coaching staff set them up. Meaning you're coming into your first time playing after Tylee Craft's passing. And understandably, any human is going to be wildly emotional following that. And it's not about not being emotional. It's about controlling the emotion where you don't allow it in this context to get you too high or too low. You have to be stable in that. And I thought that's something that Carolina handled really well. So kudos to them for being able to do so. All right, folks, that's the last question we're going to tackle today. Not really anything to get on or talk about today. So tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern on ACC Network Extra. North Carolina hosts Johnson C. Smith in a basketball exhibition game. I tweeted the link to that where you can go ahead and make sure you have that dialed up so that you don't miss out on that game. You're going to want to make sure you're able to see that. And then as soon as that game is over, we will do one of these for the basketball game. And then it's just like 8 days till the start of the regular season. I know you're all encouraged in that, just as we're going to be ready for it to come. So North Carolina tomorrow inside the Smith Center. Go to the game if you're in the area. That'd be a great way to go and support the Heels. You guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you go ahead and do that. Don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. If you're not part of our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, you're missing out on that. We would love to have you as part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's a great place to be. The other thing is, if you want to go even deeper with our show, you can find us in the Locked On Tar Heels Insider program, where you get direct access to texting with me one-on-one. It's a great way to go even deeper and support the show. 2-week free trial, and then it's just $5 a month after that. All right, guys, we'll do this all over again tomorrow afternoon. Honestly, just a little bit later, about an hour later than it is right now. All right, you know the drill. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.